Welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the technique aggressive twins, its execution, some things you should know about its execution, and some problems that may arise during its execution and how to compensate for some of that stuff. So let's talk about the attack. The attack is an in-flight minor attack. So keep in mind this is a beginning technique. It's a yellow belt technique. So what we're doing is we're dealing with something that has potential of being aggressive or a major, but it's in flight, but we are going to interpret this as being not so aggressive. But even though they're pushing us, we have to be able to read this attack. Let's say I'm distracted, I'm looking at the camera over here and I get caught. There's a situation where I may actually be taken to the ground. We have a technique for that, which is called encounter with danger. We also have another situation where, okay, we see it, we're reading it at first as just being one of these get away from me kind of guy, pushes, but it's actually where they're trying to push us and get some depth on us, and we have to deal with that. So we have to worry about gauging more. So we have a technique that deals with that, which then stops their forward momentum with a kick, but changes our depth using foot maneuvers as necessary, and that one's called snaking talon. We also have another indication where we thought this might be a push, and the opposite foot was stepping forward. Notice we're dealing with the left with aggressive twins, but then there's a possibility that they may step with the right and turn it potentially into a major attack. We have an opposite version of that, which is called attacking mace, and we close it the opposite way, but then we also deal with another opposite of how we get to their center line using our hand. Aggressive twins does the exact opposite of that. We'll go back to that ideal phase, where we're dealing with the left as our major, and then we close that line of attack, which is what we want to take advantage of, but now we do it with our foot. So our foot is executed in such a way as to open that center line back up so that we can now take advantage of it. Now keep in mind, we're going to be sticking to the ideal phase here, and it's a yellow belt technique, as said earlier, or a very beginning technique. And now that we've opened this person up, all we're going to do is kick and take advantage of it and end the technique. That's where the technique ends ideally. So let's talk through that one more time so we get to it. We do our block. We're getting outside the arm. So that means we don't want to make a cock or separate motion because this is coming at us. So what does that mean? That means I don't want to raise that hand up. I want to come from point of origin, which just comes from where it was naturally positioned. If you do have your hands up and they're doing the push, that's fine. Again, it comes from point of origin high rather than point of origin low. Now the next thing we need to talk about is what the rule is on the outside of the arm. Our rule is that we want to we want to complete our contact at or above the elbow. Doesn't mean that we have to touch them or initially make contact above the elbow, just that we conclude at or above the elbow. So we can make contact and slide up and conclude up there, but we don't want to conclude down here because then they can use that elbow against us. So just keep that in mind. That's a rule that we have. Another major rule that we're obeying here, so far we talked about two, economy of motion and blocking at or above the elbow. Next one is we want to establish a base, which we call rule number one. So what we want to do is get that base so that we can then divert that forward momentum towards us slightly off to the side and close that center line. So those three rules that we're dealing with. So keep in mind, since this is such a beginning yellow belt technique, that we're dealing with showing you a bunch of these rules and explaining these rules to you in a very simple technique, just so that you can learn them and then expand upon as you go further. So let's continue from where we were. We got at or above the elbow from point of origin. We then open up that center line with our foot. Now that we have that center line, we're going to take advantage of it. There's one or two things that can happen. Either they do not bend, and we just shoot them back, or they bend forward, and we can take advantage of that and then send them back. Now notice I've ended here into a left neutral bow towards them. As we talk through some of these other techniques that you could potentially do, you then could add some of those motions to this technique. This technique at this point ends the ideal phase, but if you wanted to continue forward, one of the more common extensions to this is that you're going to be doing a back kick, spinning back kick in this case. And the reason why you might want to do that is if you notice, as I do the kick towards him, my foot is straight up and down. If you do the spinning back kick, the kick is straight up and down, only flipped over. So that will show you both the upward and the downward version, kind of like when we're talking through the majors versus minors. This is top of the foot vertical versus bottom of the foot vertical, just switched upside down. But the problem that arises with that is I get all the way through the technique, I do my kick, and then I land into my neutral bow. But I have no line of sight for this except for forward, so I'd have to do another kick this way. But if I wanted to do that back kick, what I would do is not move the foot again. What I would do is stay right there, is do the kick and then plant so that I have line of sight for the opposite end to do that back kick. Now the next thing you'll notice is the cross out. If I'm not doing any of these extensions, typically at yellow belt you don't do cross outs. But if you're going to be doing the back kick, you generally don't want to land forward into that right neutral bow. What you want to do is do that back kick and then leave using that cross out and cover so that you can get distance from your opponent. So now let's walk through this really quick one more time, and then we'd show it one more time after that without an explanation. So point of origin, establish a base, finish at or above the elbow, cinch on the outside of the arm, closing off that center line. We then want to open up the center line with the foot, exposing their center line, and then take advantage of it either directly or slightly up using borrowed force. If we want to continue forward, we want to close our center line to them to expose a line of sight for the back kick, do the back kick, and then cross up and cover. Just do it one more time. I'm going to do it just the standard way, the ideal phase, without the spinning back kick so that you can see it. Up. Hope this video helps you. Thank you very much.